SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Artificial intelligence is promising to eliminate a host of tasks, but will it render salespeople obsolete? Ingrid Maynard is founder and managing director of The Sales Doctor. She says human connection and trust remain irreplaceable, particularly in the B2B space. She has some practical advice for integrating AI into sales without losing that personal touch. And as she explains to Jeff Waters, there's no need to be intimidated by the new technology.
I don't think we should be intimidated by anything that's going to give us an advantage. And so I think it's like any technology. We need to investigate the technology as an enabler rather than as something that's going to replace anybody or something that's just a shiny object. It really needs to be investigated around what your business objectives actually are, and it can have fantastic benefits to a lot of small businesses actually that need to do more with their existing resources.
So it's in its early days. How do we know that it's bringing benefits already?
Look, Salesforce and some of the larger CRMs, HubSpot, have been using Power BI. Sugar even have been using Power BI for a long time. And Power BI is an example of AI working beautifully for businesses to enable them to extract the information that they need out of their CRM systems to produce some really meaningful dashboards.
Yes, fair enough. We've seen it.
Exactly. So when you use something as simple as Power BI, what it does is it saves an inordinate amount of time trying to do that manually, and moreover, you then can invest that time that you've saved into making better decisions based on the information that you've actually extracted. So, I mean, that's just a really simple example.
So deep diving into that, big question that we've posed for the title of this episode, is selling redundant in an AI world?
So if we go back many, many years ago, and I can do that because I'm old, but a really long time ago when the web was in its infancy.
I don't believe you for a minute.
Yes, you do. but thanks. Thanks for the effort. No, really, when it was in its infancy, I remember Solomon Lew saying that he anticipated that Myers sales online were only ever going to be 10%, and boy, was he wrong. The way that buyer behaviour kind of trudged forward in the next 20 years really proved him wrong. And I think if we underestimate the power that AI has in the sales space, then we do so at our folly. But again, I think that it's an adjunct too. So when we take retail sales, and I know that business to business sales are very different, but when we look at retail sales, for example, the online experience should be congruent with the in-person experience. So when people go into a store, they should get a certain experience, they should get a certain level of service, they should get a certain feeling, they should have the same sort of stock exposure, they should have the same level of marketing that they have online. And what I would say is if your online experience is better or superior than the in-person experience or the bricks and mortar experience, then you can't blame customers for choosing to go down that path. And then the trajectory of that is store closures, stores become irrelevant, and really, it's not a really sound business model. So if we then take that experience and we say, all right, well, what's the future of selling? Is sales going to be redundant if we use AI and we kind of extrapolate that out in another 10 years' time? In some areas, I actually think it probably will. And I don't think we can get away from that. And that will be the industries where it just makes sense for people to go straight onto either into a call center where the AI is so advanced that it gives you a better experience than a person-to-person experience. And let's face it, that's not a really high standard. Sorry, but it's not. And so if that's better, then again, of course, the people experience is going to be redundant. But I think in higher level sales where there is, nuance, there's decision making that's required, there's influence that's required, there's the need for
person to person contact.
Person to person, yeah, but
communication.
Communication, but there's also complexity in the purchase decision or within the product itself. I think that's when trust comes into the buying decision-making factor.
Sure.
And that's when I think we can't supersede the person-to-person experience because people inherently don't trust technology for certain types of purchases and they would prefer to deal with somebody that they know, like and trust.
Can we expand on that? Can you give some more examples of how that applies?
Yeah, so when we think about things like a consulting offer, so the world that I live in, and this is where I think we're coming back to with sales and why I am obsessed with the sales revolution, because I think that sales has been commoditized to a high degree. And salespeople think that the value of what they're selling lies in the price and the product. And that's why they're struggling at the moment. They don't understand how to convey value in any kind of meaningful way from the buyer's perspective because they haven't asked the questions, they haven't uncovered what matters and the measurable benefit that the solution is going to provide to the buyer in the first place. So they've kind of missed the boat there. And so if you continue down that path, then that is, and it is just about product and price, then I think AI can handle that easily. But where I think we really want to, break into a new market or when we need to understand what a regional demographic is like or when we need to kind of get a feel for what's going on, when we need to develop those personal relationships. And the more, like consulting, for example, what I do, when you're in the market where every program is bespoke, where everything that you do needs to be relevant to the customer that you're buying from, that's where I think it's going to be impossible for AI to replicate that really high-level experience.
If I'm a small business person listening to this now and I'm thinking, okay, how can I better use AI for my sales? What would be the first step that you would suggest?
What I would do is I would conduct an AI audit across all of my processes and I would employ an expert. So there are a number of tech experts available and I don't know, maybe I can provide you with a contact of mine that specialises in doing AI audits because that's all she does. She's just a real tech expert. That's the first thing that I'd do because there's some areas in any business that AI can do some heavy lifting with. And that might be data mining, that might be using AI on your website to build lists and build better databases. It might be part of your contact and outreach process. It might be marketing. It might be any of those kind of initial points of contact with your customer base that I think it could do some heavy lifting. But then there's also the other things like finances, back-end business processes, operations that AI can also help with. That's what I would do. So I'd first of all do an audit. Then I would implement the AI where you think it's going to make most benefit. And then I think then you double down on the skills that you need to build that AI simply can't do, that are your area of specialty, and then really specialise in those areas.
That's Ingrid Maynard, founder and managing director of The Sales Doctor. Business Essentials Daily is a SoundCartel podcast. Producers are Nick Schildberger, Jeff Waters and myself. Technical production by Pete Letts. I'm Nicole Goodman. Thanks for listening. We'll bring you more Be Daily next week.
SoundCartel.